Houdini's way of modeling is called procedural modeling, which is a process kind of like a factory where you build the different parts of a factory that do different things to a product, and it kind of goes through and chunk does this, chunk does that, chunk does that, and out comes the finished product. And so that's the process, and so that's why Houdini is called procedural modeling, where it's where we're creating a process to build an object. The beautiful thing about this process is that any part of the process can be modified, gone back, worked on, adjusted. So it's sort of like a visual history where you can go back to one part and adjust that one part that you created. So it's like the ultimate undo, I guess, or ultimate undo, redo, revise. So I'm going to talk about this by demonstrating this example file. So we're not going to go through and build this from scratch. So what I'm going to do is overview the process of how I build something like this. So the first thing I do is I wanted to make a soup can. So I have my finished soup can here. And it's important for me to find out the exact details about the can. Now, one thing that's very important for production and often overlooked in schools, completely overlooked in schools, is always working to scale. And so for me, working to scale is something I think about from the very first part. And so I wanted to find out the dimensions of the can. So I did a little bit of research and by walking into my kitchen, I guess, and you can grab a can of soup and begin by measuring it. And so I can find out the height is like 11 centimeters. The radius is 3.75. And in Houdini units, using meters. And so the height is going to be 0.11. The radius is going to be 0.0375. So we need to begin thinking in terms of real-world units from the very beginning. That's going to affect our entire Houdini experience. It's going to make everything a lot easier for your career if you begin to think about real-world units from the beginning. And just as a footnote to that, other softwares like Maya, I think, uses 1 unit equals 10 centimeters. And so, but typically they're by a factor of 10. So you scale by a factor of 10 or by 100 to get it down to the correct Houdini unit. So, but just for us, we're going to be using that 1 unit equals 1 meter, regardless of what other software has, because this is how it's done in the feature film productions. If we wanted to calculate the label size, we could use a little bit of trigonometry to figure out how big the label is going to be. So if we're going to make our custom label, you can use the circumference equals 2 pi r. But if you wanted to create a label to be the right size to wrap around your can, you use to determine the circumference, which is the width of the label, because it wraps around, but we're going to flatten it out. That's the width. We have 2 times the radius, which is the number we looked at earlier, and then times pi, 3.14. And then that's the width of your label, and then your height of the label is whatever we measured it to be. And so begin to think like that from the very beginning, to begin to think accuracy. Accuracy is your goal. Because in my experience, accuracy is what the client expects just out of the box. They don't expect anything to not be accurate.